Hey, it's Jen. Welcome to the intro post for Gun Show June, all about the arms to get tank top ready. And of course, arms are really for hugging, right? So let's just be clear on what we're working with here. We want tank top ready arms, and we want to appreciate that arms are for hugging, just like our laps are for holding dogs and babies and lap naps, right? Okay. Announcement post has said arms are the easiest part of our body to show results, which is the reason why I'm so excited, because this allows a lot of people who are not really able to, or who are just starting out with exercises, to gain that little motivation, right, from seeing results more quickly. So I'll explain the rules of engagement, how the month is set up, how you can get the most out of the month, and let's just start about talking about the shoulder girdle. So the first tier is posture. So this is where we're going to start. The tiers are not necessarily a strict order or ladder, but they are sort of an order of stacking. Okay, so it's posture, then strength, then your definition, then sculpting. So again, I'll explain that as I go along the way. We're going to start with posture. And I want you to think about the shoulder girdle, which is your scapula and your clavicle, along with all of the muscles surrounding it that affects the shoulder mobility, shoulder movement. We want to think of that as a hanger. Okay, so I've said this before many times, that our skeleton is like a hanger upon which our flesh, so our muscles and our fat, hang, and that gives basically our first impression, the visual impression of the body. So literally, if you were to think about it as a hanger, so a hanger has a specific shape, right, in which you would expect, and that allows us to hang our clothes or our shirts or our dress or whatever. You can also think of like a dressmaker dummy in your mind, and you kind of have this expected shape, right? Now, if the hanger was rounded over, so in our body, if our shoulder blade, or if our scapula is protracted, we end up with rounded shoulders, or we have forward neck posture, we have a hump in the neck, you know, that and if we ever do like a back month, then we'll have some overlap, you know, talking about the scapula and the trapezius and all of that. But your joint position, your alignment, your mobility, so all of that, your posture, right, is going to affect how your arms look, right? Because our shoulders are at the very top of the visual look of our arms, okay? So I will show you how to do a posture assessment to see if this is where your focus should be, but we definitely need to include posture, because again, that includes mobility. We always think about mobility and stability before we add strength, but we need strength. We cannot skip strength, because the strength is what's going to help us, for example, the muscles to pull and to control those joints into alignment. Okay, so most people will probably have a base level of strength, even if you don't exercise, because you're carrying groceries, babies, dogs, you're moving furniture around, you're doing the acts of daily living in which you require a certain level of strength. But we don't want to actually keep adding load and load and load to a misaligned situation. Okay, so we do want to focus a lot on the postural and the mobility and the stability aspect of our shoulders when we're working our arm month. Okay, so the strength portion, though, if you have, if you already know you do not have the ability to do a good clean push-up or 2 or 3, then you kind of could just simply use that as a metric for strength gains. Okay, so strength again is going to be, you know, a necessary component, and that's where you would need to start before we hit the next tiers. Now, I still encourage you to try out, you know, different things throughout the month, but the next tier would be definition. This is when things start getting a little bit fun, because when you're working on mobility and base strength, then you have a lot of foundational work, functional movements that you need to work on. All great and dandy, but now you get a little bit of fun once you start getting into the definition tier. So definition is usually that area where people say, oh, I just want to get more toned here. So you already know, if you have an excessive amount of fat to lose, then that's going to have to be, part of the regimen. But the definition includes that toning, so it includes the a little bit of building. We're not going to be able to get into that level of people who already have a lot of muscles and they just want to grow the muscles. So that hypertrophy work is going to require a lot more intention in several areas, including nutrition, as well as needing more equipment. Okay, so we're not going to worry about just absolute hypertrophy level, but we are going to get into definition for sure. And the definition is absolutely fun, because in the arms especially, because the muscles, the main muscles of the arms are rarely visible, especially your deltoid. This is the most superficial muscle of your shoulder, and that gives the shape to the shoulder, right? And then you have, of course, your bicep and triceps. So these muscles are fairly visible and palpable, okay? So it's kind of fun to work on the definition of that arm. Then we get into the higher tier, which is sculpting. So sculpting goes a little bit beyond the definition portion, because now we get into more of the visual muscularity of the arms. So we have what's called basically your resting muscle tone, okay, versus only seeing the muscle tone when you're kind of flexed, right? So here's resting and then here's flexed. Does that look the same? Anyway, but here's an example. So, we've all been caught in that terrible angle photograph where our arms are kind of resting and our flesh is spread out, and we're like, oh my God, our arms look so fat. So that would be like an example of your resting muscle face, right? Versus if you're able to kind of angle it and flex it, So if you have good muscularity, if you have good muscle tone, your muscle tone will be visible. Your definition will be more visible when you're at rest, okay? So that is a fun tier to be able to hit. Now, my absolute favorite portion of this tier is striations. So striations are really because the muscle fibers, right? They run a certain direction. So whatever direction your muscle fibers run, you could actually kind of see this the fibers, right? Those are the striations. And oftentimes it's not actual gym work that's going to make this visible. It's usually like in fishermen or island people that are working all day long in actual real life, pushing, pulling, lifting, carrying, and doing all that kind of stuff, along with all of the tiny little muscle fibers and balancing acts that they do in order to climb, or the fishermen on the boat constantly trying to balance all those full body engagement, right? Usually what helps result in the striations. So you have to be even more intentional if you're trying to achieve that in the gym. And so that gets into a lot of fun stuff with a lot of fun accessory and bonus exercises and such, okay? Now, here is the rules of engagement. You're going to have to figure out, and I'll help you along the way, to where your focus is going to be. And then you're going to have to pick the right weight for you. The make it or break it, the difference or no difference, the results or no results is going to all depend on the effort that you put in, and that's going to include the weight that you're moving, okay? So just a couple sets of dumbbells or bands or both would be great, but here's how you're going to pick your weight. So instead of picking the weight, which is normally how we set the weight, instead of picking the weight where you could do 8 to 10 reps and then fatigue, I want you to pick a weight that you could do more than 10 reps on, but will fatigue you at a much earlier rep range. Meaning, even if you could lift or do 15 bicep curls, just straight bicep curls, we want to pick a weight that will actually fatigue you at 3 reps, let's say, if we're putting in all of the types of movement that are the tweaks that we're going to do in order to fatigue that muscle even sooner, with things like tempo, with things like changes in grip, right? All the little tweaks that we're going to add in so that we're able to take that same weight and get a variety of benefits out of it and keep progressing. So that's the weight that you want to be able to work at, right? So you don't have to worry about going super heavy. And of course, if it's body weight, you know, body weight exercises are often super hard, and to be able to command your body weight and with those push-ups, you know, is a huge feet. So the way it's going to run is you're going to pick that weight, and then I'm going to, for the exercise post, it's going to be where you'll have like a compound move so that we engage different muscles to work together correctly, prime yourself, pump the blood, warm up, and then we'll have an isolation move. So we'll work on either a specific muscle or a specific area of that muscle with the tweaks. So sort of isometrics or you know, different tempo, all the ways that I mentioned before. And then the other rule of engagement is you're going to figure out, is this the only exercise that I'm going to do, or is this part of a routine that I'm already doing? If it's the only one, then you would go, I'm not going to give you reps, you would go to failure. Failure means whether you get to a burn that's so great that you cannot work through the burn, or you lose the ability to keep good form check, okay? If you're incorporating this, the arm work as part of a full workout, then you would go to about 60 to 80% of your failure rate, so that you're able to come back and keep working without being out of commission for 3 or 4 days because you're so sore, okay? That's the reason why. And then just if you get nothing out of this whole post, is to understand that regardless of whether we're doing the arms or any exercise at all, how you're going to get the benefits is in how much effort and intensity that you put into it. So it doesn't mean highest weight, you know, it doesn't mean highest reps, it's how you perform the functions, and you need to be intentional and you need to be present. So none of this like just doing this in front of the TV or reading or anything like that, okay? So I think that about covers everything. So, you know, depending on how you're working it, you could do 2 to 3 times a week. You could end up being able to work your arms different areas 6 days a week, okay? So have fun, give it a go. I will see you in the following post. To woohoo, tank top ready arms.